say just in our culture, it's like we have to kind of be quiet and like just do our best silently.
See a lot of parallels between engineering, or the way like my engineering values are, as well as my parenting values. But at the back of my mind, I'm not gonna lie, I was just thinking about how do I get back to work from this. I literally did not touch my laptop at all. There's no way. Like, you are figuring so much out, you are sleep deprived, I will be irresponsible.
Hey, welcome to ragTech, the place for bytes and banter. My name is Victoria, I'm a solutions engineer.
I'm Saloni, software engineer. And today we have a guest speaker, Yumin.
Yeah, so we're very happy to have Yumin in this episode today. So maybe Yumin, first you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Yumin, and I'm a software engineer, and I'm a mom of two very naughty boys. I also term that Momgineer.
Yeah. So I think in today's episode, we're going to be talking about Yumin's life as a mom as well as an engineer and how she balances that. So maybe first, Yumin, you can explain to us what the term Momgineer means and also about your day-to-day life as that role.
Yeah, so Momgineer is simply a mom who's also an engineer. And I think the reason why I kind of put the two together is because I see a lot of parallels between engineering, or the way like my engineering values are, as well as my parenting values. So Momgineer just made the most sense for how I balance my work life as well as my personal life and motherhood.
I think we can all agree that it's, first of all, it's very challenging just being a mom, and it's also very challenging just being an engineer, but you're doing both at once. We're very curious, how do you juggle on that, and how do you even like switch between, if like you have to switch between those roles?
Yeah, it's not easy. I think it took me a while to even get to a point where it feels natural to me now. Maybe I'll take a step back and like talk about when I had my first kid. This was about 4.5 years ago now, but I remember very clearly feeling so thrown into the other end when I had my kid, and then was trying to figure out how do I even get back to work. And being out on leave I took about 20 weeks to start. And then I saved the rest of my leave for when he turned 1, because you had to finish using it by the time he turned 1. And I didn't want to miss all of the important milestones. And also, like, the first few months of having a baby is so precious. You're figuring out who you are, who your baby is, and establishing the communication, right? All they can do is just flail around and cry, and you're like, do you want milk? You need a diaper change? Like, are you sleepy? Are you tired? And every baby is different, so whatever you read in the books may not even be what your baby is like, it's not what your baby is trending towards, right? So a lot of it was figuring it out, and I was very grateful to have that time to figure that out as a new mom. But at the back of my mind, I'm not going to lie, I was just thinking about how do I get back to work from this. I literally did not touch my laptop at all. There's no way. Like, you are figuring so much out, you are sleep deprived. I will be irresponsible if I was, trying to do anything work related. I was gone for so long that I forgot which editor I was using. I was like, is it VS Code or was it Vim? Like, I don't even remember now. But I do remember coming back to work, and first of all, setting expectations. My working hours were pretty strict because, babies need to be fed at certain times, and they need to sleep at certain times. And if you mess up with that, if you're not consistent about it, you can really throw yourself into a loop, and the baby's just gonna be like, yeah, well, you know what my needs were. You were the one who didn't meet them. So the biggest curveball is the baby, right? So I set expectations with my calendar. I just put like my working hours. Anything outside of the working hours are, you probably won't get a response, or I'll be very, very slow to respond. And my team was very supportive of that. My manager was very supportive of that. And at work, they have this thing, right, where you cannot go back to being on call until at least 90 days after you come back from bonding leave. So that goes for birthing parents as well as non-birthing parents who work at the company, because they do realize like you become very sleep deprived, and you do have to catch up on a lot of contacts that you might have lost while being out. So I was grateful for that. Other things were having another, again, like there's this whole tribe of parents at my workplace who also went through this, who have either years of experience in it too, or are also freshly new moms that I could lean into and just really try to get some wisdom from their experience. But again, personal, right? Like baby's different, mom's different. So I always take their advice with a grain of salt and see how it applies in my situation. I do think it really helped to have a good company who understands what it was like to go through parenthood for the first time, for the second time. Like each time has its own challenges. And another thing that I did was to kind of give myself space and grace. I think I was trying to chase this cadence of productivity that I had pre-kids. And after a while, I was just like, I'm not going to achieve that. I'm going to be smarter about how I want to so-called quantify my work now. It's no longer about how many PRs or pull requests I'm shipping, how many changes and how many, code commits I'm getting into production. It was more about, impact now. I was thinking more about like how the work that I do, how is that, high impact, low impact? Is it something that is not high priority also? So I was, I think, a bit more strategic and intentional about what I was working on. And not everything, when you have a kid, your priorities shift. So what used to stress me out at work, like even the smallest, like, oh my goodness, something went out of production, the text is wrong, like that doesn't faze me anymore. Because the thing that does face you as a new parent is my kid getting enough? Are they, if they're sick, like, what can I do? And especially when they were a few months old, they didn't have all of their shots. Like, do I take them out? What's the risk in that? It's all about my baby. And so the work problems were problems. I'm not going to say like, okay, it didn't faze me at all, but it's just like different kind of reaction now. I could be actually calmer about thinking through what problems we had and then being more strategic about how we want to solve them. And I was less reactive. I was more proactive about, okay, if I do make this change, what other things might come up, right? How do I have dashboards in place that can give me a better idea of like, the impact of this change, the request times, any logging that I can add to give more information if anything goes wrong, like what was the situation of the entity or at that point in time. And so also communication wise, I was more deliberate. I was better about boundary setting. Like I used to answer all kinds of things at all times of the day. And, when you have a kid, it's like, you don't have that choice. Bath time, bedtime, dinner time, all these things. And it, we were living in the States back then, so we didn't have our family to help. And I mean, my parents did come over for like a month or two just for the transition phase, but they had to come back to Singapore. So we had to figure things out, like me and my husband. And yeah, I think through that, it just becomes important to you, or it becomes clear, like what is important to you, and you have that list. And I'm a stickler. I'm like a, planner. I love things when they are organized, because I feel like when your mind is cluttered, then everything else also feels cluttered. And so I had, my calendar was like the thing that I would
Holy
look to.
grail.
Yes, yeah. Like my husband has, he says like, oh, I'll have XYZ lunch or whatever meeting. And I say, okay, can you just make sure that's in our joint calendar or something, so that I know like when I have to make sure I was available for my kid, and vice versa. And so I think the calendar really helped, and spacing out time too, because at work, I still had to pump, right? And I didn't want to say like pumping in my calendar. So I would just say like focus time or do not disturb time. And it's a very common practice. And I think like we should normalize this, right? Like it's a thing we got to do as birthing parents. And for, if we choose to breastfeed our kid, then that's just time you have to take out of your day. And each time was like 30 minutes. And you do that at the start 6 to 8 times. Like literally hours of your day goes into this activity, right? And I felt so guilty at first of like, should I be taking this? I'm supposed to be working during this time, but I could eat my lunch while pumping, So like I would try to be more efficient about the usage of my time so that I have more focused time. Another thing was having a physical door as to your office was very helpful for me, because back in the US we had a basement, and at first it was like very open. I was just working in the basement, but I could hear my baby crying, and it was just so hard to like focus on work. You asked about compartmentalizing. I couldn't compartmentalize during that time, and I was like, we need to change out the guest bedroom and switch into an office proper, because I need to close the door. I need to be able to focus on work. Noise cancelling headphones only get you that far, you know. And thankfully we found a very good nanny, so she was able to take care of my kid back then, and while I focused on work. And I think after we established the calendar, the day-to-day regime, and having a very good nanny that we could trust, that was only then I had peace of mind. At this point, my kid's probably like a year old. Okay, so it did take me a really long time, from 4 months to like a year of figuring that out. I was not the most efficient. I was probably lagging behind a lot, but I did really try to prioritize. Yeah.
That's very, like, basically you're a superhero.
Yes, that actually sounded like a superwoman.
Sounds like a life of being a superhero
Yes.
full time. And wow, what I'm kind of speechless by how much effort have to put into this. Not only do you have to be deliberate with how you schedule yourself, prioritizing different tasks, but you also have to, like, it always gets to you, because when you're a mom, all you think about is your baby. Like, that's just instinct, right? So like how you mentioned, you couldn't ignore your baby's cries. Like, that is very, even with noise canceling headphones, how can you be like 100% at ease? Yeah. So you going through all this, wow, even though I'm not a mom myself, I have so much empathy, like just thinking about how you have to like figure all this out like in the first year. I think that's really tough to do.
I was just thinking like it has to be the company that you're working for has to be really understanding,
Yes.
because they should be understanding that for at least a year this employee would take some time to adjust. It is okay for there to be inefficiency. If, for example, you're not able to meet your KPIs, you are inefficient. You are doing work, you are getting things done, but maybe not as efficiently as you should be at your level, maybe. And I'm guessing there would be anxiety going back to work, because I've heard from my friends, at least, they were actually very, they had anxiousness when, in Singapore, we have 16 weeks for, I think, for some companies. So 16 weeks are ending, you have to go back to work the next week. So much anxiousness, like, oh no, especially in the tech industry, things would have changed a lot
very
in
quickly.
16 weeks. How do I, get back up there? How do I compete with my colleagues? How did you deal with this, as well as a newfound life at home?
Yes. Again, I think it was like leaning into the tribe, the women or the non-birthing parents, the birthing parents that walk through that and have been through it. They've shared so many of their experiences. One thing that they shared was that I found was really key was the offboarding and the onboarding. Thinking about coming back from leave as a new job. How do you deal with that, right? Like, it's essentially you'll be in a similar position as someone joining the company for the first time, or someone who's new to the team. There will be time for you to onboard, and like you mentioned, that the company also has to be very understanding. And I'm grateful that my company does have that understanding, that my manager at that time had that understanding as well. Like, I'm coming in and treat me as a new hire, right? I'm going to take time to ramp back up to whatever changes has happened and be up to date with current state. I declared inbox bankruptcy, so every notification I had, I just mark as read or delete or something, right? There's no way I'm catching up to 4 months, 6 months worth of backlog. And you mentioned KPIs. I think it's an important conversation to have with your manager. If something seems very out of reach for you personally, then I think it's a good, you need to have that conversation with your manager and decide on whether there's any levers you can tweak. And sometimes some KPIs have room for interpretation. If they're not like, very strictly a quota you must meet or numbers you must meet, then you could have maybe come up with different ideas and be creative about how you want to meet those KPIs. For example, if like one of the KPIs is to make our processes, 80% more efficient or something, well, then I will think about how can I leverage automation or tools or changes in our workflow to make it more efficient? What are the inefficiencies to begin with? So you're thinking about it more like from a strategic standpoint, and I would say try to work smarter about it versus in the past I would like work harder. Now I like there's no way I can times 10 my I'm not 10 times 10 engineer anymore. I wasn't to begin with. But it's more about like what problem are you trying to solve, and is there a more creative way we can go about solving that? Having that conversation with your manager is also important because I think they want to, at the end of the day, you're a software engineer and you're a problem solver. How you get to solve the solution is also an important thing to show your manager, right? And if they can see that you're creative about it, then okay, it's something that I know that Yumin is thinking about, Saloni's thinking about, Victoria's thinking about, and she's coming up with solutions that may be out of the norm, but gets us to where we want to be. So I think that's important as well to recognize. Not everything is like a number that needs to be hit. Or if it is a number you need to hit, then how can we get there in the non-traditional ways? I think that's how I would go about it.
Did you also have like circumstances where you realize like your colleagues, they are also working equally hard, but then Yumin, just because she gave birth, she gets to be, have more leeway?
If it did, I never felt that. I was also very cognizant about ensuring that I'm never using the, oh, I have a mommy brain excuse. I tried to keep like being a new mom out of it. What I try to do is like, hey, I do need time. I'm having stricter boundaries. I will take up projects. I will, I mean that directly responsible individual for a project. I will lead it. But as long as my manager is also comfortable, right? Because if I were treated as a new hire, would my manager feel comfortable giving me a project right off the bat? Probably not. And I'll be fine with that. But that doesn't mean that it's okay to not include me in discussions. I think my pet peeve is when people make assumptions about, new moms or about folks coming back from an extended period of time that, oh, I'm just going to assume that you just want to recover. I think that is my biggest pet peeve, where maybe I do want to be participative, and maybe I am yearning that because I've been talking to a baby or a toddler for way long. Like I'm done with the whole monologue that happens when they haven't learned yet how to speak, and I'm just constantly reading to them, things like that. I'm yearning that participation that allows me to regain that muscle that I probably have to hone again in those discussions. And so no, I would hope nobody feels that they would think that oh, she's coming back from leave, must give her more leeway, or a manager to think that I must give her more leeway because she came back from leave. I would hope that never crosses people's minds, because at the end of the day, it is my responsibility as an individual to also come back to speed and also be very I think very clear about my intentions. So I came back and I also said that, I know that I've missed a lot of context while I was out. Where can I read the TLDR? What are some issues that I can, read up on so I can get myself up to speed? What are the most important things? Because there's no way I'm going through all of the backlog or all of the Slack conversations or web notifications I've gotten, but where's the latest on this that I can read up on? And so I think showing the initiative that, hey, I'm ready to come back, I'm ready to be back in the game, but please help me out in like the TLDR, right? I think that's where I feel that companies should strive towards, that teams should strive towards, and engineering managers or managers as a whole should strive towards. I know we're not there as a society today, and that's something that I think coming back to Singapore was another thing that I hope to help break this kind of stereotype and normalize that. How else are we going to have kids and help our society build up the future generation if we're not supporting the ones who are building up this generation? So we can't really have say one thing and then do another. Our actions have to fit with what we are trying to promote, right? So I think if we're not there today, I think it's up to us also to be more vocal about that. Yeah. Listen to this podcast.
By listening to this podcast. Yeah. I love how like you talk about how you proactively communicate. I think that's the thing. Like right now we're still just trying to recognize more women in tech, and trying to like have a system that can support women, especially like those who just became parents and still struggling finding their way back into jobs. So I think you really emphasize it clearly that it's about proactively communicating your intentions. Hey, I'm actually ready to go back to it, and not assigning yourself a label that says I'm actually a new parent. And you kind of have to be professional about it at the same time. So I really like what you said about that. And actually, I want to mention you did write a blog post
I did not finish that blog post. I did not. I have it like in draft still.
but you did publish one before, right?
I don't know if it's published. It's probably still draft. Maybe this will motivate me too. If people are interested, comment in there and I will publish it.
Right. Yeah, because I think there's so much to elaborate on, like, the similarities between parenting and engineering. Just the 2 points that you mentioned, I think, that it's already so much learning that people can take away. I think people definitely underestimate how similar parenting and engineering is. And the fact that since you're playing both roles, you get to find similarities and learn from both sides. I think that's something that many people want to read about. So if you ever want to,
I will. This will be my motivation.
Yes, I love it that being a mom has also elevated you in your professional life. Like it's actually making you work smarter, and like think in that particular manner and handle changes all the time, handle curveballs thrown at you.
I feel like every episode we will learn a lot of things from you, and I hope our audience also learn a lot from you. Yes, so just to wrap up, I think being a mom, being an engineer, no matter which role you are, like there's always something that you will learn from, something that you can kind of apply to the roles each other. And you also mentioned how it's difficult to compartmentalize. Yeah, but eventually you figure out how to set boundaries, set expectations. And I think above all is you mentioned how you vocalize that. Because I think a lot of people in the workplace, they just in our culture, it's like we have to kind of be quiet and like just do our best silently, but we don't vocalize. Then no one will know like if we're struggling or if we need help. So I think you emphasize a lot about vocalizing, which is something that I need to learn as well. So once again, always learn a lot from you. So thank you so much.
But I think I will add one thing. Earlier, the first question was like the term momgineer. And we talked about playing the engineering role and the mom role. Momgineer combines the two. And I think like when you embrace that, I personally am embracing that, and you see the parallels at work, then it's more fun. I just have more fun now that knowing that I can be both at the same time, and I am both. It's both of my identities. So yeah, I think I would encourage anyone who feels that they are struggling with that to reach out. Like I'm more than happy to at least provide some ways that I cope with it as well.
Okay. Yes, we'll definitely link all of Yumin's social links.
You can follow her. You can follow her journey. I can see her really cute kids.
Yeah, she has some cute kids. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching today's episode. We hope it has been insightful and valuable to you. So thank you, Yumin. This has been ragTech. So follow us on our socials, subscribe, and hit that notification button. All right. Bye-bye.